Hello. To keep this research alive and bypass the noise, please signal the algorithm by liking and subscribing to the audit. If you move beyond passive observation and begin auditing your own cognitive environment, I have developed the Mimetic app, a tool designed to map these linguistic loops in real time. It is the practical application of the research you see here. The link to download is in the comment. Now, let us begin. The American Loop, the Soul's Game. First, let us define it, trauma, as psychology today does. Trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, causing lasting negative effects on their mental, physical, social, or emotional well-being. It stems from events involving actual or threatened harm, such as violence, accidents, or disasters, resulting in intense fear, helplessness, or confusion. We all have experienced this at some point or another, be it childhood, adult, or much later, adulthood, or in our elderly years. Across various instances in our lives, we are unfortunately subjected to this. That's just life. What does it mean when it is induced in mass? When a traumatic experience is collectively propagated. COVID-19 gives us an insight. Prior to that, 9/11. What have we seen with respect to changes in infrastructure since those two monumental events in American history? I'll add to that. We gained from these events. We continued to thrive. How much was actually gorged from mass populations? My video essays flirt with politics a bit, and it is not my area of expertise. As such, I apologize in advance for inaccuracies, inconsistencies, or flat-out ignorance. Now, that said, what I aim to identify is the weapon implemented by people in positions of power. Usually, politicians, CEOs, or other forms of supposed leadership. My work, my research, revolves around the study of language as an organism. In fact, it has been compared to the anime film Genocidal Organ, which I've yet to see, but get the gist of. There definitely is a genocidal organ at work, maybe not exactly what the synopsis and plot of the anime explains, but I believe it to be so. However, this genocidal organ is most effective under a distinct suggestive state in the human brain. I believe so. The state induced by trauma, the exact moment at which it is imposed upon us. The best moment, the time frame in our lives we call our childhood. Part 1. PMCs and neocons, the arbiters of the trauma economy. To begin with, these two breeds of humans are birds of a feather. Both utilize the same weapon to create their desired realities. Both live in service to the billionaire class. Above all, both of them use the same weapons to control and destroy the working class. Both are very classist. Only one of them is honest about it. The neocons are openly prejudiced, making it clear where they stand through their support of alt-right movements and such. However, the more complex side of it all is the neoliberals, the PMCs, who use key phrases and distinct virtue names to get people to do what they want them to do. A privileged people who at first felt guilty about their luxury, but turned back on that which they protested against in the 60s. Today, we call them the boomers. And often, they say they grew out of that phase. Diving into the meat, the weapon of the two arbiters of the trauma economy, Jonathan Rutherford wrote a piece in 2024 called The Future of the Left. In it, he touches on the nuance of the PMC, identifying where the term originated and what it referred to. In one of my previous videos, PMCs of America, I touched on Catherine Liu's work, Virtue Hoarders. Also, in another previous video of mine, cycles of the source. I offer to look into the effective use of trauma as a tool to yield dominion over the will of the masses. Now, in this segment, I will wrap these concepts up in a single package, explaining the mimetic nature of trauma induction. There are profits to be gained from trauma induction. When an economy needs an adjustment, it requires reconfiguring the masses therein, the people, us, ultimately reprogrammed to establish new markets. The subsequent curbing of supposed overgrown populations and the diffusion of older or irrelevant markets. Naturally, there will always be demographic shifts as time goes on. However, these shifts have become highly fine-tuned and contained through silicon mediums. Memes propagate at higher speeds, effectively embedding themselves into our minds, conditioning us for apocalyptic outcomes that never happen. These outcomes favoring the proponents of the propagation, the elite PMCs/neoconservatives who live by sanctimonious ideologies, condition us to worship them, while fear-mongering and virtue signaling, telling us how little we will own while we enjoy it. Trauma makes us subjective to the will of another. It creates a state of mind that makes us highly susceptible to commands issued in our direction. When the government locks everything up, we listen. When told to wear masks, we listen. Vaccinations, check. Unemployment, check. AI blackboxing of human labor, check. Highly selective job prospecting, where it is only about who you know, check. Gatekeeping of entry-level job, entry propagated by college/university alumni, check. All of this generated by trauma-induced programming through the fear of an apocalypse. In a sense, the apocalypse was a success. Since 2020, very distinct economies have surged. Part 2. Trauma economy explained. There are 4 distinct sources I am going to explore in this segment. Sources I have cited before. Number 1, the Greenbaum speech by Dr. Corydon Hammond. This speech can easily be found on YouTube, so I will not go too deeply into it. That said, I will highlight a specific segment from the speech, one that focused on trauma, which I suppose is obvious. It was discovered by Hammond and Co. There were numerous cases where the same names and terms continued to appear across different subjects or patients. Cases involving youth who were diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. Not just youth, but middle-aged patients as well. A recurring pattern being the association of a 3-letter agency we know all too well. You know, the one that sits at the heart of every major conspiracy theory. Yeah. In any case, Hammond's speech was released in the 90s, and to my surprise, he still lives to this day. Thank the heavens. In his seminar, he explains the process of how trauma is induced upon children, especially children due to their developing brains, to install specialized software that only becomes installable when the child subject is in a specific state, a state achieved through shock and stress. Hammond and Co., the Co being social workers he mentioned in the Greenbaum speech, posit that DID and the numerous personality types characterizing it are actually the manifestation of the installed software, that the traumatic states are induced through sexual satanic abuse. The different personalities of a DID subject are the distinct different software installations. Number 2 David A. Hughes and his book on trauma. A deeper dive into this would be the work of Hughes, a researcher. His book, Trauma, COVID-19 and the War for Technocracy, is one that I have extensively cited in my earlier video, Cycles of the Source. Hughes has provided an excellent boon of information on the subject of satanic ritual abuse, or SRAs, sensory deprivation, and various studies revolving around the conditioning and reprogramming of the human brain. In particular, in his book, pages 57 to 58, his exploration of mass population programming. I closed off part 1 of this video with numerous statements revolving around the economic shifts since 2020. How an event that would not have been a high magnitude traumatic occurrence for an individual was high magnitude for a population, where just a slight nudge of conflict exponentially increases susceptibility to suggestion when it propagates across a massive number of people, yielding obedience to highly dubious protocols. This shock and stress of masses creates a disaster economy, a system that Friedman's supposed free market has always counted on. Its key principle is that great ruptures in society can allow and enable effective social engineering to remake the world. This principle, likely tested at smaller scale projects such as MK Ultra or Monarch, with smaller, more targeted population sets, now effectively used at lower magnitudes on entire civilizations and societies, making them more malleable thanks to the exponential increase of the fear and trauma as it propagates. It has been said in statistics that larger crowds are easier to influence than smaller ones. This certainly adds credence to that stat. Number 3 is Catherine Liu's Virtue Hoarders. Liu's piece on virtue hoarding explains the methodology of keeping the working class down as the gates of job entry that enable the working class people to increase their means of living becomes more narrow. Again, the statement, it's about who you know, not what you can do, becomes the slogan that is echoed across platforms such as LinkedIn, where a supposed connection is valued more than your skill. As such, only a specific crowd of individuals are truly granted entry. Individuals who just happened to be friends with the employer through fraternity or sorority, family, and other personal relational ties. These crowds present themselves as being highly progressive, creating memes that advocate the people to fight against misogyny and misandry, racism or prejudice, and so many more troubles that continue to ail humanity. Lived experience becomes more important than actual experience. Your skill and expertise, not something to be taken seriously by the PMCs. No, what matters more to this class are the labels and pronouns you go by, not what you can build. Social justice for the chemical alteration and biohacking of the underage youth. In addition, DEI and affirmative action for everyone else except the black population of America. Through mimetic phrases, the eye of the observer, the audience, is convinced to believe in these policies, though they only exist to serve the advocate, not the people advocated for. They sounded great. In concept, DEI, affirmative action, these were a great step towards leveling an uneven field. However, through targeted mimetics, these systems were hijacked, ultimately being repurposed for the offspring of the elite, where Jane or John's body dysmorphia or fat sensitivity takes precedence over starving communities in Detroit. Or the H-1B that was favored over the disparaged American communities due to being conditioned to serve the American empire from birth. Progressive policy that was meant to uplift disparaged communities in the U.S. ultimately elevated the privileged offspring who inorganically rose to fame, whose position on merit in America is that it is dissipating, where skill is not inheritable, but a head start with healthy upbringings shows dramatically different results, creating nepo babies who work to some degree for their success and thrive in the zero-sum disaster economy. Number 4 goes a bit deeper into the mechanics. It is Ellie Asher's Disinfect Your Mind. As job entry becomes more narrow for the working class as it closes, it reveals a system where America operates like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, where those who can handle intense punishment repeatedly are given entry if they are not a member of the PMC social club. I said it before, that was a good thing when it was less brutal. In today's landscape, one must either conform, leading to true, unmitigated NPC behavior and diffusion of self, or one must create new opportunities or seek them out in newer spaces or markets, if they don't get crushed before that happens. We have accepted this because of the phrases used against us, the mimetic weapons that shaped this current societal structure today. We were told that the equality of sexual preference was just as important as the deep eugenic racist issues that laid out the foundation of the U.S. Again, lived experience was used as a means to validate the weak offspring of the rich, as it invalidated the brutality and grit of the working class. In Asher's work, she breaks memes down into 3 components: the anchor, the carrier, and the payload. Through this seemingly intangible technology, we have been conditioned to believe that viral Twitch streamers or corrupt politicians have our well-being in mind, that the right to biohack a child into a different gender was equal to addressing the civil rights of the ethnic groups in America. Convinced that sexual preference mattered a lot more than reparation of the disparagement of ethnic and or indigenous people. It is not sexual preference that is being challenged here, well, with the exception of the psychos who have preference for children. Rather, the greater emphasis there is over LGBTQ in comparison to the inequalities of ethnic groups across the Western world, or the fact that this has somehow overlapped with the ethnic inequalities at all. In Indian history, specifically the Hindu faith, there exists a rigid class structure, one that reinforces a strict hierarchy. In that 4-tiered structure, there exists a warrior class that safeguards the elite few. Those safeguarded that elite few, a priesthood that communicates with the divine. This horse shit ideology is not unique to the Hindu caste system, though highly distinct. We are seeing something very similar with the rise of the PMC. The billionaires they serve, equivalent to this divine priesthood, initially opened a large door, allowing upward mobility for many. Now that doorway is being closed, perhaps not by the billionaire class, but most certainly their proponents, the PMCs. You see, these people who hold strong prejudiced views towards us, the working class, since they have built their own communities, they've decided to sequester opportunities for entry, preventing us from accessing that entry, only for their children and brethren, but rarely for anyone outside of that circle. We support this loop, the American loop, because we were programmed to to do so, soaking up all of the memes that propagate across the silicon medium. Now, it no longer needs our brains to function, though the linguistic organism still operates through us. It has also taken on a new form, the large language model. The more the merrier when it comes to this organism. As such, we are in the age where language possesses either carbon-based mediums or silicon or both. The American Loop has turned out to be a much longer video than I anticipated. As such, I have decided to break it in half as I release my weekly series. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video as I continue this audit of the Traumanomics series. It will conclude with delivering trauma to society and the memification of trauma. Before you go, I would also like to remind you that keep this research live and bypass the noise. Please signal the algorithm by liking and subscribing to the audit. If you want to move beyond passive observation and begin auditing your own cognitive environment, I have developed the Memetic app, a tool designed to map these linguistic loops in real time. It is the practical application of the research here. The link to download is in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and do not take your viewership for granted.